Get ready to uncover truths and reality of today's politics. Here's your host, Lori Mills.
Hey, everybody. I hope you had a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Donald Trump is officially our president again. Praise the Lord. Anyways, did you guys know that it's been since 1988 that the Democrats haven't contested an election? Found it kind of interesting. And did you notice the uptick that we had on the J6 stuff? Well, let me tell you something. They are still prosecuting these people, and we will have none of it. I say pardon them all. Pardon them all on day one. Don't you also find it interesting that Joe Biden is releasing Guantanamo Bay terrorists back to their own countries, and the media is focused on J6ers. Our dear friend Siaka Massaquoi, who's been on the show many times, will be going to court on the 21st for non-violent crimes in D.C. President Trump, I plead with you, pardon all of these people. So today on our show, our first guest is someone who is extremely bold, just a firebrand, and has been exposing so much. He produced a movie called Operation Amber Alert, along with This is Treason. His latest film, Operation Amber Alert, exposes the child trafficking that Joe Biden has enabled. And I hate to say it, our Congress on both sides, by funding these NGOs, has allowed this billion-dollar business on human suffering to continue. So I want you all to stay tuned. We have a hot show today. On the second half of our show, I've got the mother of Enrique Tarrio coming on, Zuny. And let me tell you something. Enrique Tarrio, leader of the Proud Boys, who they used to call a white supremacist, well, he has been sentenced to 22 years in prison, even though he was never in D.C. on January 6th. So we're going to hear what's going on with Enrique. And again, I urge President Trump to please pardon him. Okay, so buckle up. We're getting ready to roll. Let's go. Okay, everybody, I want to welcome our first guest today, Ryan Matta. He's made the most incredible films. This is Treason, Operation Amber Alert. If you haven't seen Operation Amber Alert, it is currently available on Rumble, and it's free. And it's something that you need to watch, and you need to share it with everybody that you know, because it's important that the people of this country truly understand the money being made on human suffering in this country. And it's treason. And he made that film too. So Ryan Matta, welcome to Uncover California.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Privilege, actually. I'm super excited.
Yeah, well, we finally get to talk outside of X, so I'm excited about it too. So Ryan, why don't you let everybody know how this journey started for you? How did you decide to look into the border and look into the NGOs and look into the trafficking of these children?
Honestly, it was just a calling from God. Every door that I thought was going to open, it was closed, and it was closed abruptly. And then out of nowhere, just a random door just would appear, and it opened, and it was a lifeline that I needed. And it was God guiding me in the direction. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't understand why I was blessed with the opportunity to understand Bitcoin and get into Bitcoin very early, which has allowed me to have this leeway, this benefit, this life raft, if you will, which has allowed me to fund these operations and fund these documentaries, and at least keep a roof over my son's head and keep my head above water for enough period of time for me to get back on my feet and generate some more fiat income to kind of continue to get it going, these operations. But it's honestly all because of God.
Yeah, and I know at some point you and JJ Carroll crossed paths, and that might have been one of the doors that got open for you. How did that relationship start?
You ever got a friend who's like always just sending you random messages, and like you just get so many, like 90% of them you don't even look at or you don't even open up. And my buddy George Hill, he's an FBI whistleblower. I don't know if you ever got the chance to speak with George Hill, but he's one of those guys we're always just shooting texts back and forth, just roasting each other, being boys and guys. And He sent me this one. He said, I'm on I just interviewed somebody and I thought it was just like a random interview that he was on. Well, he got invited onto a podcast and he was the panel of people that were interviewing JJ. And for the first time, I heard a man saying exactly what I saw down in Texas. I've been to the border about 8 times by then, broke a couple of these stories on the child trafficking and these NGOs that are, basically keeping these children in what the left called child prison concentration camps. And I heard JJ for the first time, a man of authority, saying that this is treason. You can't go to that border and you can't see the human suffering that was taking place at that along the Rio Grande and what was happening to these women and children as they were crawling through 18 rows of razor wire with a 6-month-old infant just to be let into our country. It wasn't like that our border patrol was doing these things to stop them from coming in and they were going to deport them and send them back. No, it was almost like a game. It was like the real life version of Saw, right? Where the guy was trying to crawl through that barbed wire, and if he didn't make it out in an hour, the bomb blew up. Well, these women and children, 80% of which who have been raped and assaulted, they've literally came through hell to get to America. And then there's this 18 rows of razor wire that's set up by Greg Abbott that if you crawl through this maze of razor wire with a 6-month-old infant, while that infant's trying to grab razor wire, if you make it through that, then we're just going to let you in and you get the American dream. And I watched that and I saw that and I was just like, there's no way that this man, Greg Abbott, loves America or cares for our country or cares for humanity, because you can't watch that suffering and see it. And not just see it, we're getting chased off by Operation Lone Star sheriffs that are reporting directly for Greg Abbott. So he's sending his goons to attack American journalists who are trying to expose and shine a light on the human misery that is taking place in Texas. So at that point, and I heard JJ saying the exact same thing that I was, that this is treason and that yes, I'll leave it there, but it turned into so much more with JJ that we uncovered, that it wasn't just treason. That was kind of the idea of what we thought we were going to set on this mission is, can we prove that what our government is doing is treason? Can we go to all the epicenters of this invasion and prove that what our government is doing is treason? And that was the idea when we saw it up, when we first started. And after the first location and the whistleblowers and the people that these are inside human sources that even nobody to this day knows their names, because obviously you can't be a whistleblower and go to our government because they'll crush you. So we kept these people, we told them to stay on the inside. Because don't come out, don't share this information, share it with us, but don't tell anybody else because government's going to crush you. And after that first round of interviews, it went from this is treason to going, me and JJ both going, this is a full-scale military operation being carried out by every level of our government, all the way down from the local sheriffs that are compromised, the border patrol agents, all the way up to literally the president of the United States are carrying out this military-style operation that's designed to fundamentally transform, if not completely collapse, civilization in America.
Okay, so I have a question for you, because you kind of told me something just now that I really have never heard. I was under the understanding that Greg Abbott was trying to stop the invasion of the country. And again, this is just what I've, heard. And I can be completely wrong on this. I'm not so prideful that I'm not able to learn. In what way is he not trying to stop people from coming in? And I get the razor wire and all that is brutal. What do we need to stop people from coming in other than defunding the NGOs and getting us out of the global compact of migration? And what would you like to see Abbott do differently? And if he is connected into bringing people up and in, what is that? What does that look like?
Well, if you take a look at some of the reports that people like Michael Yon and Ann Vanderstiel have done into, I forget what they call it, it's like the Colony City or whatever it is, that 35-mile long encampment where, they're basically selling property and parcels of land to illegal immigrants, and then come to find out that some of the people that are profiting from that were also funding and donating to Abbott's campaign, and that's what really blew the lid off this entire thing. So I don't know the inner workings about it, but I do know that you listen to people like Tucker Carlson say that at any time if Greg Abbott wanted to deploy the National Guard and secure that border, he would have secured it, right? When they wanted to secure Shelby Park, they secured, and they kicked the Biden DOJ off of that property. Texas, every state is a sovereign state. You have the right to defend your border and your territory. And at any time, if Greg Abbott actually wanted to do that, he would have did that. But instead, he put how many? 7, 10, 12 million illegal immigrants on buses and shipped them to your state, in your city, where they have then went and raped American children. So Greg Abbott aided and abetted. He provided the transportation, he provided the housing, he provided the clothing, the food, the meals, the everything for that illegal immigrant to get from Texas to whatever state that he arrived in, where he was caving in Lake and Riley's skull. So the days of giving these politicians a pass and just looking the other way, that got us into this position. Until we have ultimate accountability and we start to dig into the finances of every one of these campaigns, the fact that, there's been what, 2 revolutions in Texas where they've actually overthrown the governor of Texas because he wouldn't leave office because they have this technically there's no term limits there. Greg Abbott is literally the king of Texas, and he's so intertwined with all of the businesses and all the CEOs and all the corporations in Texas that man's campaign coffer is pretty much like $1 billion. The odds of some average citizen getting enough power and enough funding to remove Abbott from power is almost non-existent. It's almost impossible. So you take a look at the situation, and you take a look at how things are playing out. I mean, the guy he's Bush, right? He came from the Bush era. So I don't know. I haven't done a ton of investigation into him. But you go look at the human misery that took place in Texas. You look at how many migrants that he helped deliver into our country. And you have to ask yourself the question, is that guy really on our side? Right? He was shipping them to Martha's Vineyard. One bus went to Martha's Vineyard. And that was it. That was it. No, migrants can't go to Martha's Vineyard. That's off limits. But they can go to your town. They can go to your city. You should open your doors, right? That's what they told us.
Yeah, see, I live in California, so I have to deal with Gavin Newsom, who, God help us all. I mean, the man's an absolute freaking communist tyrant. So, yeah, I mean, he right now is hardening up to keep the migrant flow coming in here. Now, let's talk about the victims of this, the children. I've had Tara Lee Rodas on. I know that once they get up across our border, they're sent to processing centers and given to people that we don't even know who they are. And a lot of times they're gang members. I know that she had said that there was one individual that was sponsoring children that took in 60 children. What is your take on the trafficking? Also, the fact that Jill Biden was sitting on the board of Save the Children in Guatemala. What is your take on the NGOs and the billion-dollar business that's happening trafficking kids?
It's very interesting because the NGOs that are running these child trafficking networks, if you will. Let me start off by just reading this. This is an active lawsuit, right? From our government, from our DOJ, that the DOJ has against the NGO Save the Children, right? So let me do this. This is an actual open lawsuit. These facilities are operating in Texas. I think they have about 10 or 12 facilities in Texas. So, for example, one Southwest Key report describes a Southwest Key youth care worker who in 2022 repeatedly sexually abused a 5-year-old girl, an 8-year-old girl, and an 11-year-old girl at Casa Franklin in El Paso, Texas. The 8-year-old girl disclosed that the youth care worker would repeatedly enter their bedroom in the middle of the night and touch their private areas, and he threatened to kill their families if they disclosed the abuse. Another Southwest Key report describes a Southwest Key shift leader supervisor at this facility who in 2019 repeatedly raped, abused, and threatened a teenage girl throughout the shelter at their stay at Casa Montezuma in Channelview, Texas. The child reported the abuse by passing a note to her teacher one day when the shift leader was out of the country on vacation. And she goes on to describe the abuse. I could read you this report, Lori, and it would take us the entire 30 minutes just to go through all of the charges of a government of an NGO that is being funded by our tax dollars that are operating in Texas, where the employees at these facilities are raping these minor children. So when I got to Guatemala, what I got to get was this letter from the Attorney General. Actually, this will really blow your mind.
Is this the one that was fired?
This is the one that Anthony Blinken is on a war path to try to get fired. So this is the Attorney General who's now raided these facilities, right? What I'm holding here, this is a letter to Ken Paxton, right? This letter was sent out on April 12th. And if I read it, it'd break your heart. But to sum it up, it basically says, Dear Ken Paxton, we know that Texas is aware that there's a major issue with child trafficking because of the open border crisis that your government, your country created. We know that our children are being kidnapped from Guatemala. They're being trafficked and they're being processed migratorily in the state of Texas, where they are being placed in these facilities. And we know that Texas is aware of it, that our children from Guatemala are getting raped inside your facilities. And we know that you're aware of it, and it seems like you're doing nothing to stop it. We now have intel that says that these NGOs are running a child trafficking network, and we'd like your cooperation, your joint agreement to tackle this issue together. And they're willing to go, they're not going to hold back. They're willing to use their full force of every law that they have to rescue and save their children, and not just rescue and save them, but hold the people accountable, right? That have done this to these children. So that absolutely blew my mind, because when we talk about this operation, so your audience is fully aware, right? Since as of October of 2024, so from Biden's first day in office to October of 2024, 452,121 migrant children have arrived at our border without a parent. These are children ages 0 to 17. Now, because of the quasi-public-private partnership with Alejandro Mayorkas and DHS is created with the Mexican cartels, and that HHS and ORR have created with these NGOs, they've turned America into the child trafficking capital of the world, and they've turned Guatemala into literally the child kidnapping traffic capital of the world. Out of that number, right, 42 to 48%, roughly, right, the amount of children that have come over from Guatemala is 190,952. The country is the size of Israel, 15 million citizens living in that country. Could you imagine 190,000 children have been kidnapped out of one country and somehow made it through, like 4 or 5 borders? And then now all of a sudden they're at our border. And then the first thing that they see is a man in a green uniform. And that man in the green uniform is going to take them and put them into this system where within a week or 2 weeks, they're getting raped by employees at a facility that's being funded with our tax dollars. And I'm the bad guy for calling out Abbott for letting these facilities open in his country, right?
And you think about the suffering and misery they actually went through to get up here. Talking to Oscar Blue, he's exposed so many stories of the children being raped and the dead bodies in the Darien Gap. And, you would think that once these kids get to our border and they see that guy in the green uniform, they're like, oh my gosh, this is done for me. I'm going to America, the land of dreams, and I'm going to make money, and I'm going to live in a big house, and everything's going to be better. And then they're thrown into more of a nightmare if they survive it. Southwest Keys, Catholic Family Services, Jewish Family Services, these NGOs that are hiring these pedophiles, I want to see them held accountable. Do you have any information on the adults that are running these NGOs? I know that, this whole global compact of migration, Oscar is adamant, unless we pull out of the global compact of migration, this will never end. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So the amount that you're going to see, and not in this documentary, but in my one that's coming out after this, actually 3 documentaries from now, you're going to see this picture that's going to be painted. The amount of employees that used to work in our government and have left our government and are magically now getting no bid contracts, 10, 20, 30, 400, $500 million no bid contracts. And these employees used to work in government agencies. It's going to blow your mind. The correlation to the amount of suffering that's being done to these children and the amount of money that these sick individuals are making from it, it'll blow your mind. And what I just told you there a minute ago, right? We have a DOJ open lawsuit against Southwest Key Programs for allowing children to get raped in their facilities. How are these facilities not being raided is already unimaginable. That Ken Paxton isn't kicking in their front door. Maybe he didn't have the evidence. Well, then you have the Attorney General who comes over here on April 12th.
Who's a piece of crap?
No, Attorney General from Guatemala. She hand wraps
you meant
evidence that says that we have intel, right? We have actionable intel, meaning we have the evidence that you need, that our children are being kidnapped from Guatemala. You now have kidnapped children in these facilities. Ken Paxton had every opportunity that he needed to not just raid one, it was 5 of them. He could have sent a death blow. By not answering that letter, he literally gave these NGOs bleach bit. He should have literally went over there and handed them Hillary Clinton's bleach bit and said, here you guys go. Here, now you guys got another year before Trump takes office. So go ahead and delete, dispose of bodies, bury the evidence, do whatever you need to do because you know you're getting raided. That is what basically our government has facilitated. And you cannot look at it any other way. And just constantly giving these people a pass because they're Republicans or they claim to be Republicans. I'm so over it, right? We're talking about children getting raped. When are the men in this country going to get up off their butts and start speaking up?
Well, and you had pointed out in Operation Amber Alert that the Republican Congress has paid more money to these NGOs than the Democrats did, which was just mind-blowing to me. We have President Trump taking office in 2 weeks. I had asked Oscar, has anybody contacted you? He said no. JJ just testified before Congress, which I was like, praise the Lord, there's some truth. But you can testify before Congress and nothing happens. It goes into the congressional record. They don't have they don't have power to prosecute. Pam Bondi's coming in as our new attorney general. We should have a new FBI director. We should have new head of the Department of Justice. Has anyone reached out to you or JJ or anybody for the evidence that you guys are holding to expose the NGOs and these facilities like Southwest Key to take down this multi-billion-dollar business built on human suffering?
No, they haven't. Honestly, Lori, I don't even know if I'd give it to them. I don't. That is the level of trust. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into a documentary and I'm going to give it to the entire world, and then they can sort it out. And I really advise everybody to do that. Our government is so rotted to the core, and Trump is surrounded by vipers. I absolutely love that man. At one point, I was saying I would take a bullet from him, but the people that he's picking and he's surrounding himself with, we question them, right? Like Mark Rubio, right? The guy that Trump said that he wouldn't hire to do his dry cleaning is now the Secretary of State. And that man was involved. I'm going to watch my mouth. Just watch my next documentary before I say something that I shouldn't say on your show. But these people that are surrounding him should not be trusted. Should not be trusted. And I just want to make sure I'm dotting all my T's and crossing the I's. But that little guy, man, there's so many people that should not be in these positions of power, but who knows, right? Trump is a brilliant man, and he really is. And his only downfall seems to be the people that he puts too much trust in, that he surrounds himself with, because he really seems like he loves this country and he wants to make America great again. But when you're putting rhino scumbags that have stabbed you in the back over and over again, people like Lindsey Graham, these are just the most pathetic humans. And then when you see, like, you take a look at what Bukele has done in El Salvador, and you go, wait, in 2022, right, when he finally kicked the United States government and U.S. aid out of his country, that day, 62 citizens were randomly murdered by cartels. Fast forward to 2024, and not one gang-related homicide for the entire year. In 2 years, this man has taken his country from the deadliest country in the world to the safest country in Latin America, where only 127 murders happened the entire year. The entire year in an entire country, only 127 murders. And you're going to get the mad wife who just, runs her husband over with the car because she's pissed off he didn't make his breakfast right? You're going to get those murders. But what that man has done, and what we're showing that Blinken is doing right now in Guatemala, our government goes in and they topple these governments via U.S. aid and these NGOs and this network of NGOs that they use. They go in for years. This isn't like a 2-year process or a 1-year thing. Sometimes they amp it up, like in Venezuela in 2019 when it got a little out of control and they were trying anything to do it. But that was, 20 years in the making. What we're seeing in Guatemala is they go in, they'll infiltrate via U.S. aid, they take over the media outlets, and they use those media outlets to install and attack the bad politicians they don't like and install the politicians they do like. Then they take over the justice system, they take over the court system, they pass treaties with the UN and the EU to force Guatemala to create their own police force that answers to nobody. So we basically have our FBI that's operating in Guatemala, that's literally taking out political opponents, installing people that they want to install. And we control these third world countries like they're our puppet. They're literally the CIA's puppet for the deep state. This whole drug operation, Colombia, every border, all of this corruption stems from our government. For 60 years, we turned El Salvador into the deadliest country in the world, giving them $7.8 billion over like a 60-year period. In less than 2 years, all Bukele does is kick the United States completely out of his gosh dang country. And it becomes the safest country in Latin America. Crazy. We need to wake up here in America.
Well, and again, I've talked a lot about this invisible fourth branch of government that we have. Well, they're not so invisible. The FBI, the DOJ, the CIA, that seem to have more power than our elected officials at this point. They are the ultimate puppet masters working with the globalists, Arabella Financial. I don't know if you know about them. Dig into them a little bit, which is foreign money in our elections. And I think a lot of this is a lot bigger in the sense that I do think that there's a global power that is playing puppet master to many. I do like Kash Patel. I do want to see him as FBI director. Kash, I say only Kash. I would have loved to see Matt Gaetz as the head of the Department of Justice. Pam Bondi, I've met her a couple times. She did defend Trump on the first impeachment, but we really need to shrink down the CIA, the FBI, the Department of Justice, and all these, the bureaucratic state, as I would call it, because I think that they're evil. And I think that they, again, have more power. Look what they did the last 8 years to President Trump. You know, lawfare after lawfare to the point he got shot. Look what they're doing to American citizens with January 6th. I've got a friend going to court in 2 weeks for spending 71 seconds on the grounds. You know, and he's hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt due to that. I have Zuny Tarrio coming in, Enrique Tarrio's mother, whose son is in jail for 22 years, and he wasn't even in D.C.
He wasn't even in D.C.
Yeah, we've got a problem. But my heart and soul is to save and find these children. And my cry out to our elected officials is get a hold of Ryan Matta, get a hold of J.J. Carroll, get a hold of Oscar Blue, get a hold of Ben Berquam, and work with them. They've got the receipts. They know what's going on. And for you guys to start your little research while you're going to be attacked by the left and by the deep state, you're not going to get anywhere. They've got the receipts. Go for it. I believe that if we don't clean up this country quickly, and if we don't completely do a renovation, we're all done. That's just where I'm at with this whole thing. And if President Trump wouldn't have won, I don't think we would have had a country.
No,
so
I think you're right on every bit of that.
Yeah. So you're working on this documentary. You now know Oscar Blue. And so you know the Darien Gap. And I am so happy the two of you are connected. Are you guys going to collaborate and do anything together?
In my personal opinion, I think Oscar has been ordered to not communicate with me or to not do anything public with me because of my stance on Israel. So at this time, I would have said no, but that's just a feeling that I got because at first it felt like, yeah, we were going to do something. And then all of a sudden it's been kind of silent. So I assume that somebody at some network has told him that, you know, I'm pretty much off limits.
Well, I believe that he's actually down in the Darien again, or he might be doing some more travel. Oscar goes dark sometimes. So and Oscar really isn't one, I think, that listens to those that tell him what to do. So I would definitely hold judgment on that because I think that, you know, a lot of the films that I've seen with you, it's like you and Tara and people above the border. And you've been doing a lot with the Guatemala and things like that, but to connect that through the Darien Gap, I think could be phenomenal. So I want to thank you so much for coming on. I have the highest respect for you, and I consider you my brother. And because I think we're all in this together, and we all care about these kids and the innocent that are damaged for some very evil people's agendas. And I hope you come on again. And is there anything that you want to say to everybody? Tell them where to find you. Any last closing words?
Yeah, I just want to tell you, Lori, thank you so much for having me on and being a warrior in this fight for our children. You know, I feel like it's a war on Christianity as much as it is a war on our children. And anybody out there that's trying to silence anybody or deplatform or limit somebody's reach, right? Those are the enemies, right? They're the enemy of Christianity. Because we're out here just speaking truth and everybody's entitled to their own opinion. If you don't like it, so be it. That's what America was founded on. There was never any anti-Semitic or hate speech or any of this garbage out there. That's all designed to control us and limit our speech. And we have to fight for everybody. It doesn't matter. I'll fight for a leftist. If you're trying to deplatform a leftist, I'll fight for them just as much as you're trying to deplatform a right. So we have to come together and realize that free speech is the only way. Put it out on the table. Let's discuss it. Let's talk about it. Let's expose the conspiracy theories if they are conspiracy theories. And let's get to the facts if there are facts out there that need to be got to. So my name's Ryan Matta. You guys can follow me at Ryan Matta Media. God bless each and every one of you. And thank you for having me on.
Okay, thanks so much, Ryan. Okay, everybody, stay tuned. After our commercial break, Zuny Tarrio, Enrique Tarrio's mom, and we're going to discuss how her son has been treated for not being in D.C. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the MAGA Mall. We have the largest selection of the finest quality MAGA caps and Trump caps that are made. We have over 250 hats and 1,000 different products in 28 product categories. All the caps are made from premium cotton twill. Everything on them is embroidered. As a matter of fact, in the last election cycle, we donated over 45,000 caps to Trump-endorsed candidates and conservative causes all the way across America. And you can buy any of our products by going to our website. It's at themagamall.com, like on the sign over here, and use promo code CALI, and that's for Uncover California. That will get you a 10% discount off of all of our products and also help this worthy cause. And remember, it's always a MAGA day at the MAGA Mall.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Uncover California. Okay, so as I was saying earlier, we have a really special guest today, and I will never let go of January 6th and the injustice that has happened to so many people. Years ago, I had never heard who the Proud Boys were until Antifa was attacking the public in Oregon, in Washington State. And yet these guys, the Proud Boys, would always show up and defend the public. And that was my first introduction to the Proud Boys. All of a sudden, I started hearing about this guy, Enrique Tarrio, who they claimed was a white supremacist. Funny enough, he's a black man. And so anyways, with January 6th, Enrique was never in Washington, D.C. Yet for some reason, the D.C. courts charged him with seditious conspiracy and threw him in jail for 22 years. You guys, this isn't justice, it's tyranny. And I would say every judge, every lawyer up in D.C. that has politically persecuted people, you guys need to pay for what you've done. You should not have a seat in the courts. Shame on you. And so right now, it is my honor to bring in Enrique's mother, Zuny Tarrio. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So tell me, as a mom, because I'm a mom, watching your son go through what he's gone through has to be gut-wrenching for you. Tell me how you are doing, how the family's doing, and how Enrique's doing.
Well, as a mom, you can imagine that I am devastated. I have not lived since the day he was picked up. I think what hurts the most is the unjust that has happened. So, yeah, we're devastated as a family. They not only convicted, but they sentenced all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and that's things that people don't think about. You know, you've got mothers and fathers in prison with small children that their wives don't have any support. The family's indicted along with the person who's being persecuted. Tell me about Enrique. Who was he like as a person, as a man that you saw? And tell me what you think about his involvement with the Proud Boys. And because, again, I used to watch them defend people. So other than that, I really didn't know anything about them. Tell me about him.
Enrique's a very good human being. He's a great family man. He's a great patriot. And he got involved with the Proud Boys. He was at one time the chairman of the Proud Boys, which is a very good group. And I'm glad you mentioned that. A lot of people don't see it like that because they hear what mainstream media has to say. But you need to look at all the aspects. And they did defend the public a lot against Antifa and a lot of other left groups. He is a good man. He has been a good leader. He was not in D.C. on January 6th, but not only was he not there. I mean, he didn't even direct or conspire or plan anything for that day or during that moment. I was kind of hearing some people say that about that. And the white supremacists, that is just the funniest thing of all of this, when they call them a white supremacist, or even the Proud Boys are white supremacists. They have all types of men there, of good men. They have whites, they have blacks, they have Asians. But bottom line, that group was created just as a drinking club, and then it became political. and they decided to help out against. Nobody was helping anybody against Antifa. People were being attacked on the streets in the West Coast and the East Coast, and they would just go out there and just protect everyone and just give their opinion and their freedom of speech.
Right. I remember seeing video. It was actually a church group in Oregon that basically they were doing a church service. There were children there. And the next thing you knew, Antifa had shown up and they started shooting fireworks and munitions at the people. And what Antifa had done in those couple years to terrorize people, and none of them have ever been held accountable. And yet, I think that's why people like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers stood up to say, well, if our government isn't going to protect these people, we're going to. And I had a lot of respect for that because as someone who actually ran for office once and was face to face with a guy who was like 6'2", dressed in black bloc, that's really intimidating. And I do remember at one point, one of the Proud Boys was shot and killed in Oregon, and there was no justice for that either. So, you know, it's pretty amazing to me how the mainstream media, fake news, has created narratives to demonize the people that they're politically against.
Correct.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are that the government never did anything to control Antifa and to
Right.
control all those situations. There's not one Antifa member that's doing 1 year or months or much less 22 years. So what the government, I think, did was that they were trying to cover up what they did not do and how things were going with incarcerating the Proud Boys and so many people on this January 6th situation, which, by the way, was mostly government created, if you ask me personally. So they were trying to divert what everybody was looking at by getting everybody to look at the Proud Boys, to look at Enrique Tarrio. And that's why he came up with those, well, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why he came up with those 22 years in prison.
Which is crazy to me. January 6th, you know, we had peaceful protesters that were in D.C. that day to protest what everybody thought was an illegitimate election. I, to this day, do not believe that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. And because of 2024, there's 15 million votes missing now. Where did they go? People went there to practice their First Amendment rights. And I do think a lot of the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys went there to protect the public that day. And again, Enrique was never there. Another thing, I know that there were feds in the crowd, and I don't think the riot ever would have happened if munitions were not shot into the crowd and created panic and chaos. The narrative that the mainstream media and the Democrats are still pushing are all these police officers were killed. Not one police officer was killed that day. Ashley Babbitt was killed that day. Roseanne Boylan was killed that day. So there were a couple other gentlemen who had heart attacks after munitions and tear gas was shot into the middle of the crowd. So tell me about Enrique's case, because again, he wasn't there, and yet they're stating that he sent a text message. And so all of a sudden it's seditious conspiracy. Can you dig into that a little bit?
There was thousands of text messages. A lot of them, Enrique, there's no proof that Enrique even answered them, but those that he did say, they were totally taken out of context. They were
Right.
taken out of context in court, and they were rolled on to, the media. But really, those texts don't prove anything. If those 12 jurors would have been in any other city, any other venue, as we had requested a change of venue, I don't think we would be where we are now.
Right.
Um, there was a lot of text, but none of the text said, go attack the Capitol, break this, go in, stop. This is an insurrection. Let's go against the government. Nothing to that effect. Not one message said that. So a lot of the messages were taken out of context. It's like if you and me are texting and I say, you know what, I don't like how the government's running this, and they take it out of context. So it's the same situation. They took all those conversations out of context. And again, first of all, Enrique wasn't there, but there was no text saying what his group had to do. There was
Right.
no messages during the time period that the January 6th Capitol situation was going on. He wasn't there. But not only wasn't there, because I can't just say, okay, he wasn't there. No, he wasn't there, and he didn't conspire. He didn't have a plan.
Right.
As a matter of fact, they had a Zoom meeting, I think back in December, prior to that January 6th, where he's telling them exactly how calm they have to be, what they have to do. He was there for a specific reason, and that was to make a speech. He didn't make a speech because he was told to stay out of the DC area, which he did. So Lori, the way I see it is that if they make him to be this general, I hate to use that word, but like a general, he wouldn't have left those guys alone on the
Right.
ground if there was a plan, if there was a conspiracy. Plus, Enrique Tarrio can't control the thousands of people that were on January 6th that day. His group was there, his friends were there, but a lot of those people, most of those people, didn't even know Enrique Tarrio, nor did Enrique Tarrio know them.
Right. Well, to top that off, I've talked to a lot of January 6 defendants, and I will continue to do so till I see pardons. One thing I've noticed is the process is part of the punishment for a lot of these people. And a lot of these people have taken a poisonous plea deal in order to try to save their families financially. And they weren't guilty. I've also seen the courts withhold exculpatory evidence in most cases. They do not have a jury of their peers. DC has a 97% conviction rate for all J6ers, which is
Correct.
unheard of. And for instance, John Strand, when they had his case, he basically went into the Capitol. He was a bodyguard for Dr. Simone Gold. And she took the poisonous plea deal, had to do 4 months. He fought it because he's like, I didn't do anything wrong. In the court, they literally had an image of him with his fist up. And if you watch the video where he did that, because they took a still shot of the video, he was cheering the police on. We're with you. Stand strong. And they took a freeze frame of that photo and said, look he was aggressive. He was attacking the police. And John had to do years in prison over this. I want restitution for these people. And I have another friend, 71 seconds in the threshold. He goes to court after 4 years of torment on the 21st of this month. And I just thank God that President Trump won, because if he didn't, they wouldn't stop. When Enrique was arrested, what happened? What was the story there? Did he have the SWAT team at his house and all that stuff? What happened with his arrest? Like, did he expect it? What happened there?
Let me just go back a little bit, Lori.
Totally.
I don't think any J6er should have taken a plea.
Yeah.
But I do understand them why some of them did take the
Right.
plea. Most of them were forced in some way to take the plea. They were brainwashed by DOJ to take the plea. So I do understand that. The 5 guys from our indictment, which are Enrique Tarrio, Ethan Nordine, Zach Rail, Joseph Biggs, and Dominic Bazzola, were the most, they could have taken a plea, but they did not, because they knew that they hadn't done anything wrong. They knew why they were at the Capitol that day. They were sure of themselves. And the worst is that they believed in the justice system with the Biden administration, whereas we all know that went south. But going to your question, yes, he was taken on March 8th of 22 with a SWAT team from his Miami home, like if he was Osama bin Laden.
Right.
They came in small tanks. They came with long arms. Did he expect it? I don't think he expected it on that particular day, although he was seeing everybody else go down. So I think maybe at some point he thought, well, I could be next. But what's so funny is that if he is this mastermind, why didn't you come pick him up first? Why do you
Right.
come pick him up almost last? So these people, it's something incredible what they've done. They actually have destroyed their lives. I always say once you're a J6 defendant, and Enrique Tarrio falls under that category, unfortunately, or for I don't know what reason, but once you're a J6 defendant for your whole life, you'll be a J6 defendant because your life is destroyed. You have nothing to come home to except your family. Nothing, no business, no bank accounts. You have nothing because those that did have homes had to sell them to leave their little ones with something or their wives or whatever it is. So once you're a J6 defendant, forever a J6 defendant. There's no way around that. They have destroyed American lives.
Yep. Oh, sorry, I had a cold. Cut that
Oh,
out of
me
there.
too.
Okay, so the only people that really benefited from J6, in my opinion, are the Democrats, oddly enough. They stopped the debate on the floor that day. And oddly enough, with President Trump being certified this time around, it was the first time since 1988 that the Democrats didn't object to a Republican president being installed. So, not buying the narrative. How do you feel about President Trump coming in office, and does it give you hope?
About President Trump coming into office, as an American citizen, putting aside J6, I feel it's great. I think
Yeah.
we showed on November 5th what we're capable of. I think we showed what the country needed. We showed what we wanted. So just as an American citizen, it makes me super proud for President Trump to take office. As a J6 defendant mother, I cannot even tell you what that means to me. That means to me that my son and 1,000 something other human beings and American citizens are going to have a chance to have their life back again.
Right.
But Ashley Babbitt will not have that. Roseanne will not have that, and several others will not have that. So our heart goes out to those families, and I think they know that. I've made that. I've always said that. But if our guys can have their lives back, and I hope that President Trump stands by his word, and I know he's a man of his word, and he has felt it himself in a courtroom full of enemies, full of prosecutors that have been weaponized, full of DOJ officers and FBI. So he knows what that's like for the unjust to come to your door.
100%. And even now they're still coming after President Trump. Even now they're still arresting people. I truly believe that if President Trump was not elected, this country was heading towards tyranny like we have never seen before. The authoritarianism that we have watched with the Biden DOJ is disgusting. As far as Enrique and the rest of the J6ers, what people don't realize is a lot of these people have been labeled as domestic terrorists. And the problem with that is then they're on a no-fly zone or no-fly list, so they can't fly anymore. You say that they're coming back and getting their lives back. In reality, though, the amount of money that has been lost due to unjust incarcerations, I don't think their lives will ever be the same. I would honestly like to see these judges and prosecutors that have abused their power pay these people a restitution. Because talking to Chris Burgard, he had told me, a lot of these people that take the poisonous plea deal, they're threatened like, Enrique was with 20 years in prison. Daniel Goodman was threatened with 20 years in prison unless he took the plea deal. And then they slap it down and he ended up doing like 4 months or something. The threat of decades in prison for a lot of these people, they're like, well, do I take this plea deal and get out in 4 months, or do I risk going to jail for 20 years? And that alone shows how unjust these prosecutions were. have you talked to Enrique? How is he doing?
Yes, I talked to him this morning, and he's in Pollock, Louisiana. He's headstrong, and he's a man of faith, so he knows that God will lead us into a good moment to come back to family, which is what he wants the most.
Yeah, well, let him know that I'm praying for him for one, and I know a lot of people are. I never saw his
Absolutely.
arrest. I never saw his arrest as something just. I'm like, I don't care, no matter, as you said, anything he would have texted, they could have taken out of context. And we've seen it for 8 years what these people do. Kind of like when President Trump said, go peacefully and patriotically to the
Yes.
Capitol and cheer on your members of Congress. And yet they twisted that he started an insurrection. It makes me sick that people like Benny Johnson, Liz Cheney, and Kinzinger and Adam Schiff, and these people even have, those that are still seated should not have their seats, and they should be prosecuted. And, Joe Biden giving these people medals of freedom is the most disgusting thing I think I've ever seen in my life. What are your thoughts on the J6 committee? Because they didn't even mention in their report Ashley Babbitt's death.
What do I think about the J6 committee? I think it was disgusting. I think
Yeah.
everybody on the committee was disgusting. And for Biden to give, and I say Biden because I never voted for him, so he wasn't my president ever. For Biden to have given them a medal is like the most ridiculous thing. I mean, that's the last thing he's done that's ridiculous. I don't know who's advising him, but whoever's advising Biden is really doing us a favor because they're just completely drowning the Democrats
Right.
more and more. So for her to get the medal, then we should give a medal to all our guys, all our J6 defendants of freedom, because that's what they saw when they went there to protest against the new Biden administration at that time. They
Right.
saw what was coming, and we not only are seeing it, but we have felt it for 4 years. So I think it's absolutely ridiculous. That J6 committee was a show. They
Yep.
actually contracted people to put on the show. So that was a complete show, and the government ran with it. And you're absolutely right. Those people need to be held accountable. Every single person has to be held accountable because you know what? You have a job to do, but you need to know what's right and what's wrong. And you took an oath. Every single FBI agent, every single DOJ, every single judge took an oath to defend freedom and to defend the truth. And they didn't do that. They went along with the show.
Right. And, we can go back 8 years and the same people, Adam Schiff and all these people started Russiagate, where, I think for all of us that knew that was a lie, that was treason. They tried to overthrow the president of the United States with a lie. That was an insurrection. And yet these are the same people that have gone after the J6ers. It was like anything they could do to take President Trump down. They didn't care who died. They didn't care who went to jail. They don't care about the American people. And I want to thank Chris Burgard and Nick Searcy and Dave Sumrall, who have put out these films with the truth. For those of you out there that haven't seen J6, A True Timeline, you need to watch that film. For those of you that have not seen the War on Truth movie or Capital Punishment, you need to watch those movies. And I really hope that once President Trump's back in office, I don't care if he uses the emergency broadcast system. I would like to see these movies on every channel so the people know the truth, because right now there are still people that have been lied to, and I think that's why our country is so divided, is because the people have been lied to by a very dishonest media. What has the media done to your family?
Uh, Mainstream media has completely destroyed my son's life.
Mm,
Fortunately, there's people like yourself and like many, many others that see through all that fake news,
yeah.
and that report the truth. and that act on the truth, and let us raise the awareness on your programs and let people not forget who the J6ers were, who Enrique Tarrio has been. I'm very grateful for that. I'm extremely grateful. I have uncovered so many good friends and so many good people through all this. I think that God put us on this path to meet and to know that there's good people out there.
Well, and I do think that indeed this has basically been a war of good versus evil. Those that follow Christ and those with faith against those that are kind of globalist and like this new world order, and they become their own gods, and they're into this LGBTQXYZ LMNOP mafia where, you know, they don't even know what a man is and a woman is. And they're the ones that are now pushing for sex changes on our children. And again, I just praise God, Lord Almighty, give him the glory that we're going to get this country back. For me, I learned the media lied in 2011 when I actually was working on the Ron Paul campaign. And I'll never forget that day where I was sitting there, and I used to watch NBC Nightly News and I'm sitting there, and Ron Paul was 200 votes behind Mitt Romney in the primary. And that night they said, here are your candidates. And it was everybody but Ron Paul. And I went, well, that's weird. They really made a mistake there. And then they had the New Hampshire primary, and it was everybody but Ron Paul. And they basically did a media blackout on him to steer the election. And ever since then, I never trust them. So when Russiagate happened, I just became a digital warrior, started researching. The stories just fell apart. With January 6th, people need to do their due diligence because there's video out there of Antifa changing in the bushes. There is video of Ashley Babbitt punching an Antifa guy in the face and trying to push people off the door and talking to the police up front. And there's video of people being funneled to the what I would call the death tunnel. There is video of peaceful protesters having munitions shot into the crowd. And I think that if people aren't watching these videos and doing their own due diligence and just listening to the mainstream media, they're doing themselves and this country a disservice. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, absolutely. People cannot listen to mainstream media and just not do their homework.
Yeah.
We saw that in the elections just recently. I remember a couple of days before the election, I was looking at the numbers and I'm like, wow, it's really close between Harris and Trump. And they had us at the edge of our seats the whole time, the whole time. And it was all a lie. It was all a lie. We
Yeah.
saw what happened on November 5th. We saw the numbers. We saw how much the Republicans won by. So it was all a lie. Don't listen to mainstream media. Do your homework. Look at your videos. Get informed. And I'm glad that Trump is back, and hopefully we are going to get our country back and our J6 defendants.
And understand this, due to COVID in 2020, they took the California model nationwide, which was mass mail-in voting, no voter ID, and all of a sudden this year, in this election cycle, 15 million votes are gone. I can tell you as a Californian, I basically precinct walked for 2 months before the election, low propensity voters who hadn't voted in the last two elections, getting them to get out the vote. What they told me, I always vote. Their votes never got there. They mailed them in. After the election, I spent a month curing ballots. What does that mean? If somebody doesn't sign the outside of their envelope or the signature doesn't match, they kick those votes back out. And the Democrats have a machine of paid people through Arabella Financial that do their curing. On our side, it's all volunteers. I spent a month doing that. They throw out votes and they count until they win. California is not as blue as everybody thinks. Okay, so I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. Tell everybody where they can find you and what they can do to support Enrique.
Lori, what they can do to support Enrique is continue to raise awareness. Please don't let them be forgotten. We have TarrioFamilyFund.org. all the help is welcome to bring these guys back to something, to a new job, to a new business, to help them out. Again, they're coming back to only family. So
Yeah.
TarrioFamilyFund.org.
Thanks so much. And do you want to
Thank
share
you,
your
Lori.
social media or anything for people to follow you?
Yes, we're on X at Zuny, Zuny Tarrio, Tarrio, and you're welcome to follow me. I'd love for people to follow me and know what's going on.
Okay, thanks so much for coming on, Zuny. And
Thank you, Lori. We
I'll
appreciate
see
it.
you on X, and I'm always here for you. If you need to talk, you want to be on again for any reason, I would love Enrique to come on after he gets out.
He will. Thank you
Okay,
so
great.
much.
All right,
Bye-bye.
everybody, stay tuned. Last night we had some massive fires break out in California. And actually, let's not stay tuned. Let's talk about this now. I ran for office in 2022, and one of the reasons I did that was because we have serious water problems here. In 2014, the people of California voted for what is called Proposition 1. What that did was usher in hundreds of $millions for water storage in Southern California. Gavin Newsom and the supermajority of Democrats basically stopped water coming to Southern California from Northern California from the snowmelt due to a little fish that's about this big called the Delta smelt. That fish is not indigenous to our land. So basically, they put this little fish up above the people of California. They pulled the goats out of the hills. They pulled the cows out of the hills because, cow farts create climate change. Yesterday, we had what I'm going to talk about that is still going on with zero containment right now is a massive firestorm. People need to realize how populated these areas are in Pacific Palisades, in Altadena, Pasadena. And I had friends, probably 4 right now, that have lost their homes. I have a video, hopefully we can play it, of a friend going back to her house last night trying to hose it down because she wanted to save it. I didn't hear from her for 3 hours. I didn't know if she was dead or alive. And praise God she's alive. Her home is gone. You guys need to realize this is not climate change. We have had Santa Ana winds in California since I was a little kid, and I'm not a young girl. What this is complete mismanagement from the Democrats in the state. Karen Bass took money away from the fire department. Last night, the fire hydrants in Pacific Palisades went dry. They have not allowed water to come south. It comes from metropolitan water, which, again, we are very limited on water in Southern California, and it is due to Democrat policy. You guys, if you want change in the state, you're going to have to vote different. Jackie Irwin, who I ran against, who is the assembly member in the Palisades and in Malibu, has yet to issue a statement. Gavin Newsom came out and did a photo op for everybody. He doesn't care about you. Karen Bass doesn't care about you. These people care about power. If they truly cared, number one, where are the millions of dollars that were for water storage? Where is the water storage? This is your fault. This is your fault. Everybody, I'm going to ask you, pray for California. Pray for this state. It is a beautiful state. It's not run well. Pray that we can get rid of mass mail-in voting because it's the only reason it's blue. We need voter ID. We need the homeless crisis taken care of because God forbid some mentally ill homeless person could have started these fires. We don't know. But we still have gale force winds, zero containment, and at this time, 4 fires. 4 fires, you guys. People are in danger, and we're talking thousands and thousands of homes lost. Not to mention the fact that insurance companies left our state after the Woolsey fire about 2 years ago. So everybody was forced onto what's called the Cal Fair plan. And understand, even though this state supposedly makes the most money, according to Gavin Newsom, we are extremely in debt. California's lost until you, the people, vote differently. I'll see you next week.